To know something, you have first to be able to think about it. In thinking about things, we apply our concepts to them. Through what they mean, our concepts bind us to the world and enable us to know it. But what is it to apply a concept to something? I say I know what koalas are. What does this mean? Well, one thing I can do with my koala concept is distinguish koalas from other things, like kangaroos and wombats and possums. I know what conditions are to be met for something to be a koala. If there are conditions to be met for a concept to apply, then if the conditions are not met, the concept shouldn't be applied. Applying a concept seems, therefore, to be a matter of following a rule. Wherever there is a rule, there is the possibility of a mistake. If I'm looking up into a tree at night, I might mistake a possum for a koala. Possums are not koalas. Perhaps I think that koalas are bears. Koalas do not meet the conditions for being bears. Koalas are marsupials, bears are not. This is another kind of mistake I may make about koalas. But what accounts for the fact that I can make a mistake in applying a concept? Why doesn't my koala concept just mean something like koala or possum on a dark night, rather than just koala? Let's call this rule the schmoala rule, as opposed to the koala rule. If I can't tell the difference between a koala and a possum on a dark night, then there certainly is not going to be any obvious fact about me that determines which rule I am following. And therefore nothing obviously about me will decide whether, when I call a possum on a dark night a koala, I am making a mistake or not. But suppose I generally don't apply my koala concept to possums, not even on dark nights. In determining whether the conditions for a concept are being met, we typically apply a range of different methods. I shine a torch up in the tree and lo, I discover that what I'm calling a koala is really a possum. Doesn't that show that my koala concept is distinct from this hypothetical schmoala concept? Not necessarily. It could just be that where I don't apply these concepts to the same thing, I'm making a mistake. What fact could distinguish which of these possibilities was the case? The thing about a rule is that it applies to an infinite number of instances. I, however, am only ever going to be in a position to apply the rule to a finite number. The problem is that the facts about my use will always underdetermine which rule I am applying, since many rules are consistent with my actual usage. Every time I call something a koala, I could be following my koala rule, according to which, for any infinite number of possible cases, koala just signifies koalas. Or I could be following the schmoala rule, according to which my koala concept applies to koalas or any of the potentially infinitely many possums on a dark night, which I just don't happen to observe. Couldn't I just stipulate that this won't happen? Couldn't I just say that my koala concept applies to all and only koalas? But what rule am I following for all and only? More than one interpretation of each of these terms is consistent with all the facts about how I have used them, including interpretations where all and only means all and only observed cases. On this, the schmall and schmonly rule, the stipulation about what koala means will be as consistent with the schmoala rule as with the koala rule. A stipulation is, after all, just itself a further rule, which aims to restrict the scope of some rule. But if the rule-following problem holds for one rule, it holds for all. You might think then that there just are facts that determine how an individual would apply their concepts in any of the infinitely many cases that they don't actually observe. That is, could we appeal to an individual's dispositions to apply a concept to determine which rule they are following and what they mean for all cases? The problem with that suggestion is that unless we are infallible, which we have no reason to believe, our concept applying dispositions include cases where we make mistakes, like mistaking a possum for a koala. So appealing to our behavioural dispositions is not going to be any more helpful in solving the rule following problem.